Save a few cents, don't go to the butcher. Beef prices are setting records just in time for grilling season.
Just in time for grilling season, beef prices are breaking all previous records. So if you need to save a few pennies, avoid going to the butcher. In just 1 week, the price of beef in the United States has doubled. And it's not the only instance. 5 other Brazilian imported staples of the American diet, from your weekend seafood feast to your morning coffee to a glass of orange juice, are increasing at a rate never previously witnessed. The aisles of Costco and Walmart are now the most obvious representation of the financial burden that millions of people are experiencing as a result of Trump's 50% tariff policy, which was intended to safeguard the American economy. However, there is more to this list of 6 items than just price tags. Every item has a series of subtle effects that are changing how Americans eat. Of these foods, which one is silently costing you the most money? Let's begin with the list's first name. First place. If you have ever purchased a 4-pound package of Kirkland Signature lean ground beef from Costco, you may have been taken aback to discover that the once familiar $6.99 price tag has increased to nearly $24. This largely imported Brazilian ground beef is a popular option for spaghetti or family burgers and is one of the best-selling products in Costco's frozen meat department. It's not any better at Walmart. Once costing about $4.25, a 12-ounce can of Libby's corned beef, a ready-to-eat product imported through Brazil's JBS Group, is now approaching $6. USDA choice frozen ribeye and sirloin, which bear the small print product of Brazil, have also increased by about 40% since the year began. You may believe that the cost of beef has not doubled in the United States. However, the effects of the tariff are only getting started. A pack of Kirkland Signature lean ground beef will almost certainly cost $30 if nothing changes in the near future. All of these items contain raw beef from Brazilian cattle farms, although the majority are processed or packaged in the United States. Labels that read "packed in the USA using Brazilian beef" or "imported from Brazil" are information that few people had previously noticed, but they now clearly indicate that the price will be far higher than that of domestic beef. Every pound of Brazilian beef costs a few more dollars at the port because of the 50% import tax. The difference is immediately noticeable on store shelves. Brazilian steak at a family BBQ for 4 used to cost about $25, but now it can cost over $40. Many have been compelled to alter their menus, reducing the amount of red meat or switching to chicken pork. Supermarkets are not the only places affected. Fast food restaurants like Wendy's and Burger King, which employ a combination of imported beef in some of their menu items, are changing their prices or portion sizes. Burgers that used to seem like a simple choice are now considered by many. Information from the United States. According to data from the Department of Agriculture, Brazilian beef imports decreased by 15% year-over-year in Q2 2025, but the average price per pound almost doubled, particularly in the low-cost frozen beef market, where Brazil once held a sizable position. Domestic production has not been sufficient to make up the difference. A stroll through Walmart or Costco makes the transition quite evident. In order to escape the indirect tariff hit from imports, many consumers increasingly pick domestic USDA prime or choice beef, even at higher prices. To cut costs, some are experimenting with plant-based alternatives or combining chicken and beans in dishes. However, that is only the surface if you believe that rising meat costs only impact the main course. The cost of food in America is also rising due to another element that appears to have a supporting role, yet is present in thousands of goods, from supermarket shelves to dining establishments. This shock is significantly more subdued. 2. It's likely that you ate anything prepared with Brazilian soybeans this morning without ever realizing it, even if you've never purchased a bag of raw soybeans from the shop. Large Brazilian soybean fields are the source of a McDonald's chicken meal, a bottle of Wesson oil in your home, or even a protein smoothie at Starbucks. The United States depends on soybeans for a wide range of businesses, including food processing, plant-based milk production, and animal feed. Brazil is currently the world's top supplier of soybeans. Every year, millions of tons are sent to the United States from ports like Santos and Paranagua, where they are processed into oil or crushed into meal to be used as ingredients in thousands of items sold at Costco, Walmart, Target, and Subway's and Burger King's industrial kitchens. Every cost calculation was altered when the 50% import duty on Brazilian soybeans went into force in August 2025. Simply clearing customs increased the cost each container by tens of thousands of dollars. The majority of the increase fell on consumers since processors were unable to absorb it all. The effects were immediately noticeable on store shelves. A six-pack of Silk Original soy milk at Costco increased by about 25% since the beginning of the year, and a 48-ounce bottle of Wesson soybean oil at Walmart increased from $5.49 to almost $7. This may not sound concerning just yet, but it's just the beginning. According to USDA data, U.S. imports of Brazilian soybeans decreased by more than 20% in Q2 2025 compared to the same time the previous year, but the average import price increased by about 50%. Global prices have been rising as a result of Asian markets, particularly China and Japan, increasing their purchases for stockpiling. Experts caution that the price of soybean oil, soy milk, and similar items may easily treble from early 2025 levels if supply is limited into the fall. Many people are unaware that soybeans have a much greater impact than plant-based products. Soybean meal makes up more than half of all animal feed in the United States. When that becomes costly, the cost of producing pigs, chickens, and cattle also increases, which raises the price of meat, eggs, and dairy products. Even if you never use soybean oil or drink soy milk, it has a cascading impact that makes your everyday meals more expensive. Soy is used extensively in processed meals. Soybean oil or soy flour is used in Costco's granola bars, Subway's mayonnaise, and Walmart's protein cookies. Manufacturers frequently resort to shrinkflation, which involves maintaining pricing but lowering the weight or size of their products when prices rise. In the end, you pay the same but receive less, a subtle kind of inflation that many people are unaware of at first. Due to variations in harvest timing, climate, and protein content, the United States' domestic supply, despite its size, cannot completely replace imports from Brazil. The demand for Brazilian soybeans is constantly high since they are appreciated for both industrial feed and food processing. A simple dinner of grilled chicken salad with a soybean-based dressing, which used to cost roughly $15 in ingredients, might cost over $30 after the double impact takes effect. Keeping the household budget under control is more important to many fixed-income households than eating dinner. In an uncommon action that serves as a subliminal warning to customers that pricing may change in the future, Costco has begun to note that certain Kirkland goods include imported soy. Even if some suppliers have agreements with Walmart for soybeans from other sources, the price increase cannot be controlled. If meat is expensive, soybeans are a slow bleed that gets worse every week until the bill at the end of the month surprises you. Furthermore, this is just the second component. Price increases significant enough to startle even people who have never paid attention to the economy are being seen in the next one, which is linked to the morning ritual of millions of Americans. 3. Coffee. Imagine this. This morning, you enter your kitchen, open the cabinet, and get your go-to cup of coffee. It may be a bag of Starbucks whole bean roast, a jar of Maxwell House from Costco, or a can of Folgers Classic Roast from Walmart. Everything seems normal as you scoop the coffee grinds into the coffee maker and the air is filled with that familiar scent. Until you see that the price has changed from the previous week's receipt. The market has been shaken by the 50% import tax on Brazilian coffee. The price of a 60-kilogram bag of green Arabica beans, which are used as a raw material by American roasters, has increased by about 40% since the beginning of the year. At the retail level, a 20-ounce bag of Starbucks Pike Place at Costco increased from $15.99 to almost $21, while a 48-ounce Folgers can at Walmart increase from roughly $10.99 to over $14. Coffee's pervasiveness in daily life is what makes it such a burden on household budgets. Coffee is a daily practice for about 70% of Americans, and many people over 50 find it difficult to break. People rarely give up coffee completely when prices increase. To maintain the habit, they instead reduce other costs. Coffee is therefore a product that defies price, which is why retailers are able to gradually raise prices without losing customers. It's more than simply coffee grinds and beans. Products that are ready to drink are also being squeezed. Nespresso pods, a Kirkland cold brew pack at Costco, or a Starbucks double-shot espresso container at Walmart all use imported Arabica beans, and the cost per unit is increased by 15–25% in a matter of months. A price doubling no longer seems improbable at this rate. Do the math. If you purchase a $20 bag of coffee every month, increasing the price would result in an additional $240 a year for home brewing alone. The effect is considerably more noticeable for those who frequently purchase coffee to go. In certain locations, a $4 latte is already on its way to being $6 or $7. Large coffee shops are preparing. While Dunkin' is increasing imports from Colombia and Honduras, Starbucks is experimenting with blends that include more bean varietals in an effort to reduce its dependency on Brazil. But it will take time for these changes to occur. Brazilian Arabica is still necessary for many brands to maintain their distinctive flavor. Customers must therefore decide whether to stick with their preferred brand and pay the greater price or move to less expensive options that taste different. More significantly, what will be taken out of the monthly budget to create place for that morning cup of coffee if the price of coffee actually doubles? Like any other essential, coffee is used by tens of millions of Americans, and its price increases have an impact on the economy. However, if coffee prices continue to be reasonable, there may soon be an even greater price shock for another beverage that is equally popular and a staple on breakfast tables nationwide. Fourth, there is more to orange juice than just a beverage. It is associated with memories for many families, particularly those of Americans over 50. The fresh squeeze at a hotel while on vacation, the Tropicana carton with breakfast at the local cafe, or the morning glass poured by mom. Because of this familiarity, orange juice is now a staple in many family breakfasts. The cool lights still shine on racks of 89-ounce Tropicana Pure Premium at Costco. However, more consumers now merely wait briefly before shoving their carts by. Some choose to use blended juices with less orange or use smaller cartons. Simple orange in the 52-ounce quantity is still available at Walmart, but more spots are empty following the weekend, not because sales are increasing, but rather because fewer orders are being received. The way people purchase and consume it has changed more than the price tag's number. Families now purchase a single large bottle instead of 2 or 3 to savor over the week. Some reserve it for special occasions or the weekends. To make it last longer, some people add water, not because they prefer it to be weaker. Hotels and breakfast establishments are also adapting. In order to make customers pay more if they desire orange juice, several have replaced large glasses with smaller ones or taken it out of the typical breakfast combos. The image of a fresh orange juice, which traditionally represented the American breakfast, is no longer featured on the new menus at certain local cafes. This change affects more than just flavor. Orange juice contributes to the feeling of a full morning for many people. There's a slight but discernible void left when that drink turns into a luxury, as though a piece of the everyday routine is vanishing. Farmers market vendors also notice the shift. Even though it takes longer, more consumers are choosing to buy whole oranges to juice at home rather than freshly squeezed bottles. Others completely give up on orange juice in favor of tea or water, yet there is still a glimmer of desire in their eyes as they look toward the juice stand. A larger shift in consumer culture is the result of these minor adjustments. In the past, Americans bought orange juice without giving it any thought. Now, it's a deliberate decision, and every bottle in the basket seems like both a habit and a financial choice. The realization that traditional American morning fare, eggs, bacon toast, and a glass of orange juice, is largely relegated to old photographs is perhaps the most bittersweet moment. And if orange juice makes you nostalgic, the next component will make you feel something else. It was previously praised as a modern superfood and conjures up images of distant tropical beaches. There is now hesitation instead of exhilaration whenever you search for it at Costco or Walmart. 5. Acai. More than half of Americans over 50 would likely shrug if you asked them about acai berries. It's just that they've never given it any thought, not because they don't like it. Although the deep purple berry from the Amazon, acai, has long been referred to as a superfood, it is typically seen on Whole Foods premium shelves, at smoothie bars, and on California diet menus. It has never been on many working-class families' weekly shopping lists. The majority of people are unaware that acai isn't limited to those visually appealing purple smoothies. It subtly appears in far more recognizable items. That granola bar with berries that you reach for first thing in the morning, Walmart's mixed berry juice. Costco sells the fruit on the bottom yogurt in large quantities. It's likely that they include some pureed or powdered acai that was imported from Brazil. Manufacturers must raise the price of anything they touch when the new import tax increases the price of raw acai. Although there is no sign stating that the price has gone up because of acai, you will note that the Nature Valley berry granola bars are now a few cents more expensive. The super mixed fruit juice in the cooler is now $1 more expensive, and the fruit yogurt pack is no longer discounted. The feeling of losing control starts to seep in at this point. You are indirectly paying for acai even if you never intended to purchase it. It's similar to an unexpected visitor who continues to appear on your weekly grocery bill, only becoming apparent when you begin comparing today's receipts to those from a few months ago. The shift is even more noticeable in certain cafes and eateries. With less tang, that berry blend juice you ordered now appears pallid, an indication that the recipe's acai content has been reduced to save money. However, the cost remains the same or goes up. Even if you don't see it on the menu, you can still taste this concealed inflation. Ironically, a pricey ingredient that most people hardly perceive can yet have an impact on a wide variety of commonplace products. In the past, acai could be disregarded with no consequences. Whether you wanted to or not, it is now having an impact on your supermarket basket. More customers are grumbling about the increased costs of nutrition bars and fast snacks, according to dry goods clerks at Walmart. No one specifically mentions acai, but if you look at the ingredients list, you'll notice that it's frequently at the top. Costco has also noticed a change. In an effort to conserve money, more consumers are selecting artificial flavor items over natural ones, which frequently means reducing or doing away with actual acai. For Americans over 50, this evokes a well-known concern. Losing control over the costs of items they adore isn't the only issue. It's losing control of the things that stealthily find their way into their regular meals. It might be any other ingredient tomorrow if it's acai now. It's possible that you won't notice until your grocery expenditure starts to rise again. Acai is not a necessary food. However, the narrative serves as a warning that in the global food system, changes in the Amazon may have an impact on American dinner tables. Wait till we reach the last item on today's list if you believe you're safe, since you don't purchase this superfood, one that has always been a possibility for millions of American families. So far. 6. Seafood. The saline fragrance of ice and the glimmer of salmon, shrimp, and crab, arranged beneath bright lights, are familiar to anybody who has ever stood at the seafood counter at Costco or Walmart. However, most people are unaware that a large portion of that seafood has traveled thousands of miles before it reaches its destination. And Brazil provides a substantial amount. Brazil is a large exporter of seafood, though it's not the only one. Americans particularly enjoy frozen shrimp, tilapia, tuna, and several kinds of crab. After arriving at ports like Miami, Houston, or Los Angeles, these cargoes go through cold storage at retail chains before reaching the counter you are accustomed to. Every link in that chain became more tightly tied when Brazilian commodities were subject to a 50% import duty. Importers were required to pay tens of thousands of dollars more each container at the port. Holding costs increased in cold storage as shipments took longer to clear, and all of those expenses ended up in one spot at the grocery store counter: the cost. The weekly goods like Costco's 2-pound bag of Kirkland shrimp, which went from 14 lanarts to over 20, are where you'll notice the biggest change. A 4-pound carton of cheap tilapia at Walmart now costs over $5 more than it did a few months ago. Even the once healthy preferred canned tuna, wild caught, is becoming more and more expensive every time you go to the shop. Seafood is remarkable since it may be enjoyed on special occasions as well as a daily meal. A supper of king crab or lobster is a common way for families to celebrate significant life events. However, even a straightforward shrimp stir-fry for the middle of the week now seems like a frugal choice. Even restaurants are affected. Red Lobster, Joe's Crab Shack, and even several local sushi restaurants have been forced to reduce their quantities, increase their menu prices, or use less expensive seafood. Chefs acknowledge that these substitutions alter the flavor. And clients take note. Processed goods that few people connect with Brazil, such as canned seafood salads, frozen seafood pizzas, or chowder in a tin, are more affected than you might imagine. When the price of Brazilian ingredients rises, everything becomes more costly. Even though you might never purchase fresh fish, manufactured foods nonetheless cost more. Many people feel as though they are losing something they know. In the past, seafood was a way to change things up during the week. Families are now saving it for special occasions. The emotional bond with the meal also diminishes as those moments get shorter. Another aspect is worth mentioning. The cost of Brazilian seafood isn't the only consideration. It serves as a reminder of how heavily dependent on foreign sources America's food supply system is. In a matter of weeks, a shock on the other side of the globe could alter your supper menu. There is more to those pictures of seafood containers stranded at the port of Miami than just logistics. They tell the tale of millions of American households' dinner tables, grocery costs, and dining customs. The true question may not be how high prices will rise when you include all 6 of the foods on this list. However, how much do you still control on your dinner plate? The American dinner table in 2025 is shifting in unexpected ways, from beef to seafood, from your daily orange juice to upscale products like acai. These 6 Brazilian goods demonstrate more than just the negative impacts of tariffs. They highlight how flimsy the supply chains that we depend on a daily basis are. The question of how much of your meal is actually within your control still stands as costs rise, options decrease, and habits change. This film is not meant to encourage segregation or dispersion inside the United States. Every piece of material is offered with the intention of promoting conversation, investigation, and analysis based on social trends, public opinion, and current events. We adhere strictly to all federal laws, including the U.S. Constitution. Please share your thoughts on today's analysis by leaving a comment so that we may continue the discussion. To ensure you don't miss our next unbiased, in-depth analysis, remember to press the bell, like, and subscribe.